Hello, my name is Contover, and this is the Current Buzz. Today we have a gentleman, his name is Jack Fultz, I'm sorry, and people probably made that mistake before. He is the winner of the Boston Marathon in Boston in 1976. You were a marathon runner. We're going to talk about marathon running because the Boston Marathon is coming up on Patriots Day. So I know a little about marathon running. I probably saw Jack finish at the finish line. In those days, I used to be into marathon watching till it got really yuppie-fied. And if you remember, it changed the whole. It was this. You had to be seen there to be cool at that time. There was a certain time frame. Was it the 70s or 80s where it got yuppified?
Well, it was a slow rollout.
Yeah, it was. So I've never had a marathon winner on the show. So thank you for coming and talking about the marathon. I'd like to know about running, your history. It was amateur running in those days. Now people get paid. You wish you were running today, right?
Well, I'm not so sure. They're running so fast. I often, those of us who were running back then sometimes look forward now, what's going on today, and say, wow, would we be able to run with these guys? They're running considerably faster than what we did. Of course, the shoe technology has played a big role in that. And just like with every sport, the evolution starts rolling along. When Roger Bannister ran the first sub-4-minute mile in 1954, runners had been trying to do this for years and years, decades, and couldn't do it. And there were even some who speculated that the human body wasn't capable of it. After he did it, within the next year, 2 or 3 other runners had done it from around the world. Within 10 years, a high school runner by the name of Jim Ryan out of Kansas ran under 4 minutes, considerably under 4 minutes. Right. So people break barriers, and then it creates new horizons for the rest of the world participating in whatever those activities are. Right. So I think that's happens in track and field and anything where you have records. The records get broken, and then it just sets a new horizon for everybody else who's in that category of potential to seek a new higher horizon. And so
before we talk about your running history, et cetera, seeing that you started in regards to running and so forth, this is the Bible, right? Track and Field magazine. I get this in the mail. It's sent to me. I've been involved in track and field for a long time. I love track and field. I follow it. I watch it on TV. And Calvin Kiptoon, is that his name?
Yes.
Ran 2 minutes and 3 seconds.
2 hours and 1 minute. 2 hours and 1 minute.
2 hours and 1 minute.
And a few seconds,
and
right.
a few seconds. So he may break the record under 2 hours. He may.
Well, he won't, because sadly he died in an automobile accident.
Right. That's right. Recently, at 25 years old.
He was driving. His coach was in the car. There was a young woman in the back. She was also still a runner. She survived the crash, but Calvin and his coach unfortunately died in that traffic accident.
Yeah, that's right. It happened in Kenya. That's right.
Yeah.
I should have known better, but he
But somebody will. There are a lot of other runners in his category who are near him.
Yeah, that magazine.
Well, maybe a lot.
This is the annual magazine, the top 10 runners in marathon. They have the top 10 in all endeavors. They have the top 10, in 100 meters, 200 meters, the top 10 worldwide and USA. Okay, so now I have the marathon rankings. Were you in the rankings when you?
I was when I was running.
In the top 10 worldwide.
I was U.S. I was in top 10 road runners, and my fastest marathon at the time was in the top 20 world list.
Oh, okay.
So.
All right. Basically, it's Africans who dominate in the top 10. This is world rankings. There's only one European, Bashir Abdil from Belgium. He's ranked.
He's probably African, and he just moved to Belgium, which some of these athletes do.
Yeah,
the United States, U.S. Army sponsors a team that has some African runners come over. And
in fact, there's in the U.S. rankings, there's 1, 2, 3, the U.S. Army.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and those guys are all Africans.
Yeah. So, I mean, they dominate now.
They do. They have for quite some time,
Yeah.
actually.
And when they run the Boston, it's either Ethiopians or Kenyans.
Right. East Africans.
East Africans,
Yeah.
So that's the rankings. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, you ran the 3,000-meter steeplechase. And the world rankings are of all Africans except for a guy from New Zealand, Beamish, and a guy from Japan. So 8 out of the 10 are basically
East Africans.
Africans, yeah,
Yes.
East Africans.
Uh-huh.
Tell me about the steeplechase. That's an unusual race. I watch it. I like it. Explain it. 3,000 meters. Usually it's in the 7-minute window.
Well, no, the world-class runners or men are running under 8 minutes.
Oh, under 8
But there
minutes.
still aren't
Yeah,
that many
well,
in the sevens. The world record
Okay.
certainly is down there now.
Okay.
But it's still rarefied air to get under 8 minutes in the steeplechase. But 3,000 meters is a little bit short of 2 miles, about 200 meters short of 2 miles. It's a novel event. I actually only ran it a few times in college.
All right.
Okay, but looking back, I wasn't quite fast enough to be with the really, really fast guys on the track.
Right.
But I played high school football and basketball and whatnot. I was athletic enough that I could have learned how to get over these barriers and maybe run. One of my good friends at Georgetown set the NCAA record and won the National Collegiate Championship there, and I trained with him. So, but I never really, I didn't pursue that particular event with any real fervor. In hindsight,
So there's barriers. If you hit the barrier and you miss the barrier, what happens?
Well,
you jump over.
You want to miss it. You want to jump over it and miss it. Some athletes step on it on each one of the barriers.
Okay. Yeah, I
right.
see
And
that.
every lap, there are 4 barriers, and then there's a water pit, with also a barrier in front. There are some athletes that literally hurdle that water stop barrier and land 1 foot in the water, and then they run back out. Most of them will step on that, of course, and jump. A few of them will jump all the way out of the water. Most of them will land into the water that's maybe about ankle deep, right? So it kind of breaks the fall for them, and then they keep rolling along.
I always thought about the guy who has his sneakers are wet after that. How
They're
does
all
it
wet.
feel? Yeah. Has that happened to you in regards to jumping in the water or stepping in the water and
Well, when I
you
ran-
have soggy?
Yeah. I mean, it was so long ago, and
Yeah.
of course, the shoe technology again today is such that the shoes probably don't hold any moisture. So the steeplechasers know their feet are going to get wet. They probably don't wear socks under these nylon-topped shoes now, so they probably doesn't really gain any weight. Back when I was running, the shoes were leather, kangaroo leather or whatever, and we had socks on. So yeah, by the time you finished the race, you're squish, 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 squish.
Yeah.
You probably had, but your focus was on other dimensions of the race, so
Right,
it
right.
wasn't really a big deal.
I see. Okay. So running the race, sneakers technology. What would you tell a father or mother who had a child that's playing basketball or doing track or doing other athletic events about sneakers and technology? Would you suggest that they pay the high-end amount for the better sneakers for their kids, for the betterment of their sport, lacrosse, or whatever it is?
Well, you definitely need shoe technology that is functional and protects the young athlete in whatever sport they're playing. So you don't want to get the rock bottom shoe that might not give you the lateral support that you need, but to pay $250 for a shoe for a kid in junior high school or even high school, no, I think that's overkill. But this idea of different sports as well, it kind of makes me think, and you didn't ask specifically about this, but there's a book written by David Epstein. His first book was titled The Sports Gene. His second book is titled Range. And it really encourages parents to get their young kids into a variety of sports rather than go the Tiger Woods route, where Tiger, before he could even stand up, he was watching his father hit golf balls, and it was all golf. And he became the amazing, iconic champion that he was, and some would argue still is, although he's not playing the Masters this week. So, but anyway, so the specialization happens, and parents see this, and they say, well, the champions were specialists at a young age, so I need to get my kids specialized at a very young age, and some do. This book, Range, argue strongly against doing that, that you want to, as young kids, really they should be introduced to a wide variety of sports, regardless, and it's all expensive now. They have to pay just for their kids to participate, let alone buy them the equipment. When we were in school, the school provided all that. I mean, the parents paid through their tax dollars, so it was covered, but that's all changed now. And yeah, the costs are astronomical, and a lot of families can't afford this stuff, and it's unfortunate because some of them maybe just not be able to participate, not just because they can't get the equipment. Maybe they can get secondhand equipment or hand-me-downs, but just the cost of travel and participating in some of this stuff, is the finances are an obstacle to some of the families, which is unfortunate. That should never be the case, but you know, the solutions to that are a whole different program and a long conversation.
Jack, let's start with how you started running. All right. Was it in high school, or was it middle school? Was it in college?
It was junior high school, what they call middle school here now. It was junior high, 8th grade, 9th grade. I played, as I say, I played junior high football, junior high basketball. I'm the youngest of 4 boys in my family, and my brothers were all athletes, all of them better than me in high school. And although I had more success in the running than I did in the other sports.
Franklin, Pennsylvania?
Franklin, Pennsylvania. And this is small town, northwestern Pennsylvania, where we jokingly say the NW stands for nowhere. So
it is nowhere. I looked at it.
And like much of Midwestern America, you know, everything changed. You know, with the industries in my town were making coal mining machinery.
You were an oil country, weren't you?
We're on the verge of oil company, but Oil City, Pennsylvania is only 8 miles away. There were our big high school rivalry.
Oh, wow.
All the Oilers. And Rockefeller had his Standard Oil world headquarters in Oil City, Pennsylvania.
Right, I remember that, Oil City,
The very first oil well ever drilled in the world in 1859. We learned this because it was in our local area. Was in Titusville, Pennsylvania, only another 8 miles up the road from Oil City, if that. And that's still there. Drake, you know, Sir Edwin L. Drake drilled the first oil well, and sprouting up, and they still have a big museum of all that. So anyway, yes, it was oil country, and Pennzoil, Quaker State, all those world headquarters. That's all gone now, right? So the world has changed, but that's that was part of where my background came from, and I played other sports, but running was where I had my
Why
greatest
University of Arizona? From Eastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, I was going to go to a one-year trade school with my good buddy out of high school, but then very near the end of my high school career, all my friends were going off to 4-year colleges. Two of my brothers had gone off to 4-year colleges. One of them on an athletic scholarship playing football for a small school in Pennsylvania. And I decided sort of late in the game, I need to go to a 4-year school, and I want to pursue my running. So I applied late. And consequently, I started mid-year. I got accepted to Florida and Arizona. I wanted to go to a school where the weather was conducive to running. And
Makes sense.
I was more concerned with my running than I was with an academic pursuit. I didn't have specific interest necessarily. I just wanted to get a good education somewhere. And I knew I would no matter where I went. So I went out to the University of Arizona in Tucson. I was a walk-on the track team. I walked in with my Chuck Taylor high-top Converse basketball shoes. Talking about shoe technology, I didn't even have running shoes then. My cotton.
You didn't have spikes.
We did have spikes for the track.
But
I showed up and I said, "Hey, coach, I'm Joe Schmo from Pennsylvania. I want to go out for your track team." And he said, well, he listened to my track time. He asked me my times in high school and whatnot. He said, I was run of the mill out there. I was dime a dozen in big D1 college. So he said, well, I can't do anything for you. Freshmen were not eligible for varsity sport anyway. And it was now, as I say, it was second semester, so we were getting ready for outdoor track there, or they were. And he said, but you're welcome to come and run with the distance runners on the team. He said, be here at 3 o'clock this afternoon and you can run with them. And I was there at 2:50 and I ran with them and they were great. They welcomed me and showed me the ropes. And by the next year I came back as second semester freshman. It was now cross country, and the NCAA had changed the rules that year that in the minor sports, of which cross country is, everything but football, basketball, and baseball, that freshmen were eligible for varsity in the minor sports.
That was changing that time frame.
Exactly. And so now all of a sudden my coach, now he saw that what I had done on the track in all-comer races that they hosted, and that I was an up-and-comer and maybe I could make a contribution to the team. So now he gave me a locker and uniform and welcomed me onto the team. lo and behold, at the end of the season, I was 7th man on the team. 7 men get varsity letters. So I'm walking around the campus of University of Arizona with an Arizona letter jacket. I was BMOC, big man on campus.
Wow.
It was one of the most rewarding awards I've ever received in my entire career for me. But anyway, so then I stayed in the second year and scored again on the cross country team and lettered. And then it was expensive for me to go as an out-of-state student. We didn't have a lot of money. I'm one of 7 kids. My parents worked 2 jobs.
Yep.
So, and I was now beating guys on scholarship or running with them. And I asked for some financial aid. I think he would have given it to me, the coach, if he had it, but he didn't. So I transferred back east. And it was during the Vietnam War, 1969. And in the transfer process, I was out of school for a few months, and I got drafted. That was, to us, that was a one-way ticket to Vietnam if you got drafted in the Army. Back then, it was a year after the Tet Offensive. Things were very ugly over there. And I'm all in support of supporting our country, some kind of universal service. Even if the government helps you through your education or whatever, you come back and you pay it back. But you don't have to go into a war zone and die necessarily, not of your own volition. So I get into the Coast Guard. I was able to get into the Coast Guard. I served 4 years in the Coast Guard, and 3.5 of which were down in the Washington, D.C. area. So when I got out of the Coast Guard, I had met and was running against some of the Georgetown runners. And coach gave me an offer I couldn't refuse, gave me a full ride. I had matured now. I had gotten much better in my running, and so he gave me a scholarship. So between that and the GI Bill, I was actually getting paid to go to school. It was a pretty good deal. And so my 3 years there, my third year, final year, I was a fifth-year senior, 27 years old. I had been introduced to the marathon when I was in the Coast Guard, running on the roads. And so now as a fifth-year senior at Georgetown, my eligibility had expired. I knew when I graduated I was going back to the roads. Road running still wasn't then what it is today. It wasn't real big, but Frank Shorter had won the Olympic marathon in '72. Bill Rogers won Boston, set the course record in '75. So road running was starting to get big again.
But they didn't call it elite runners in those days.
No, not really. Yeah, that term itself, I'm not sure when that really got attached to the top field. But the point was still the same, that people were starting to pay attention. There was still no money in it, no real big sponsorship. Some guys were getting paid under the table to come to races and stuff.
Oh,
so that was,
you mean amateur sports?
It was
not really
it was
amateur?
amateurism, and then we called it shamateurism. There was money transferring, but nobody. But it wasn't any big money, and it still isn't big money compared to pro sports. But it's much bigger now because it's out in the open, and there's a whole story about how that happened. But in '76, as I say, I was still a fifth-year senior when I came up and ran Boston. My objective running Boston that year, it was my 4th time running. I ran it when I was in the Coast Guard 3 times. And my top finish was 12th. So
that's not too bad.
I knew I could contend and mix it up with the guys up front.
That was 1971.
Good, yes, 71. So, and it was only my second marathon.
Yeah.
So I had hope, that I could get up there and mix it up with the big guys, with the elites.
Yeah.
And so in '76, I came up, but my primary goal was to get my Olympic trials qualifying time. All the other Americans had been running marathoners, had been running the marathon the previous years, and they got their qualifying times for the trials. I was still in school running for the school, so I couldn't go out and run marathons. So I needed a qualifying time. That's what brought me to Boston. And excuse me. So I had the race of my life. Interestingly enough, because I knew I had to get inside the top 10 to get my sub 2:20. But back then there were no clocks on the course. There were no mileage check marks. You didn't know where you were vis-a-vis time in the race.
Oh.
So I looked at previous year's results. I said, look, on a good day, anything in the top 10 will get me under 2:20. So the other guys will pull me under, right? That was my objective. And then anywhere in the top 10 wherever I finished at. As long as I got my qualifying time, I'd be happy. And it kind of released me from the bondages of competition anxiety, which, you line up the starting line, everybody's fit, but everybody's a little nervous. You never know.
What number did you have in '76?
It was number 14.
Number 14, okay.
Well,
that's
interestingly, it turned out it was a real hot year. It was crazy hot. It became known as the run for the hoses. It was 96 degrees at the starting line.
Wow.
Insane, right? And there were no water tables out there, really official ones. So people were hosing the runners down, putting garden hoses up on step ladders. I ran into yards and took little showers, everything. Probably ran 27 miles. And lo and behold, but because I was now perceiving my opponents as my allies, if they ran fast, I was more likely to run fast. Okay, so all of a sudden they're not my enemy. They're not an opponent. They were like my teammates in my mind. And it just kept me all that much more relaxed, and I ran the race of my life. I took the lead about the 18-mile mark. By the time I took the lead, my number had disappeared. I cut it down into the 2 little digits, 1 and 4.
Oh, okay.
And so all the water curled the numbers up, you couldn't see. So I had Georgetown on my singlet, but no bib number. So they didn't know who I was. The guys on the photography truck were all yelling, who are you, who are you? They'd already shot all their film mostly. There's not too many pictures of me taking the lead. They were passing around Coca-Colas and having a good time. They thought the guy who was in the lead through the first 18 miles, he was Richard Mabuza from Swaziland, and he was a 2:12 marathoner, a real contender.
Right.
They figured no one's going to catch him. Well, I caught him. He crashed and burned. I worked my way up from the top 10 in Wellesley, just worked my way through the crowd. They were all coming back to me. It was so hot, they went out too fast. I just ran even pace the whole way. They all came back to me. So from 18 on, I led the way. And
when you're running, do you feel like you're flying?
on some days, when you're having a good race, you feel like you're invincible and immortal. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And it's a real high.
Yeah.
It's a real high.
Okay. No, I just thought. And then you ran in 77. You came in 9th place.
With about the same finishing time, interestingly enough. It was another hot year. I didn't have a particularly great race. So Jerry Nason from the Boston Globe, who chronicled the race for the Globe every year, asked me after the race, said, Jack, you ran almost the same time, within 30 seconds. And you only finished 9th. What happened? I said, Jerry, this year 8 guys ran faster than me. So if they hadn't been here, I would have won again.
That's interesting. And then you ran in 1978, and you ran your best time at 2:11:17.
Yeah, right? That was another magical year. I would mention to you before the show that I got stuck behind the bus. I may have been able to eke into 3rd. I missed 3rd place by 2 seconds, and it would have been a U.S. sweep. Bill Rogers won his second of his 4 wins that year. And the guy who finished 2 seconds behind him, I was with him at 22 miles, Jeff Wells. We were running together. He gapped me a little bit, and then the bus got between us, and I never saw Jeff again.
Wow.
I don't know that I could have finished as fast as he did, but I think he would have pulled me along for a little bit.
We have 2 minutes. You talked about Bill Rogers, right? I mean, you know him very well.
Yeah, Bill, we interact more now than we ever did. And when I moved up here, I was apartment sitting for Bill. He was out west training in the nice climate. I was training through a New England winter in '79.
So is that your story, or do you have a better story? We have 2 minutes to tell it.
Okay. Well, Bill and I are great friends. We have great stories now. Bob Hodge is part of our group.
Right.
We get together.
Bob's a great guy from Lowell.
He's a fabulous guy from Lowell. Tremendous athlete, wonderful guy. We do what we call the 3 Bs. Burgers, brews, and books. We get together pretty regularly and have a good time and tell these old wartime stories.
Right.
But what I've done, we only have a little bit of time, I'd like to share the story where my running finally came. I retired from my running. I get into a little bit of coaching. I coached a young kid who, when he was a freshman in college, I coached him in junior high school. Here we are in junior high school. And his freshman year in college, he lost his best friend to brain cancer. He had been treated at the Jimmy Fund Clinic at Dana-Farber.
Wow.
And so he went over to the Jimmy Fund. He met a guy there. They decided to run the marathon and raise some money in Seth's memory. And he asked me if I would coach them and help them. I did, and that turned into what's called the Dana-Farber Marathon Challenge. So this was 36 years ago. We're now 35 years into this team. Our team grew from 19 runners to more than 500 runners running the Boston Marathon. We'll raise $8 million this year. We've raised collectively more than $125 million for innovative basic cancer research.
Now you have to run a certain time for the Boston Marathon. Do these people have to run a certain time?
They do not.
Okay.
You're right. That's a good point. Very valid point, and a big one in the hit story of the Boston Marathon and running marathon in general. That for Boston, you get in by qualifying by age and gender, different time standards, or you run for a charity team. And our Dana-Farber happens to be one of the many. And
so they can contact you and run charity, and that's...
or go on the BA website. All the charity teams are listed there as well.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for being on the show. I mean,